Have you ever had a fantastic day, just a really great day, and then one tiny thing goes wrong, and suddenly that's all you can think about? One rude comment, one little mistake, and it just erases all the good stuff. Well, it turns out you're not being pessimistic. Your brain is just running a very, very old piece of software. Let's get into what that is and what you can do about it.
Think about that for a second. Our brains are not by default wired to make us happy. They're wired to keep us safe. That means they are built to be hyper-vigilant threat detection machines. And in our modern world, that ancient survival program, well, it can feel a lot less like a feature and a lot more like a glitch. Right? It's something we've all felt. You could get 100 likes on a post, but you'll obsess over the one negative comment. You could nail a presentation, but you'll replay that one tiny stumble in your mind for hours. This isn't a weakness, it's not a character flaw, it's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Let me say that again, because this is probably the most important idea we're going to talk about. This is not your fault. The anxiety, the worry, the way you sometimes dwell on the negative, it's just the sound of a perfectly functioning, ancient operating system that has kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. Today, we're going to look under the hood of that system. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll name the glitch. Then we'll meet the brain's alarm system. We'll see why bad memories are so sticky and check out the chemistry behind it all. And then, the good part, we'll get into some real strategies for rewiring your brain's default setting before we finish with a whole new way to think about your brain's true purpose. All right, let's start by putting a name to this thing, because it's not just some vague feeling, it's a real documented mechanism in our minds. It's called the negativity bias. It's a simple name for a really powerful idea. It just means that bad stuff, criticism, fear, failure, loss, hits our brains with much more impact than good stuff. It's the brain's factory default setting, and it quietly shapes what we notice, what we remember, and how we feel about our lives. And what does that actually feel like? Well, it feels like our failures always seem to loom larger than our successes. It feels like joy is delicate, Like it can be shattered by the smallest thing. It can feel like a constant, quiet struggle to stay balanced, or just getting to okay can feel like a real achievement. So if that's what it is, let's talk about where it is. To really get this, we have to pop the hood and look at the brain's hardware. Specifically, its little red panic button. So, meet your amygdala. It's this tiny almond-shaped cluster of neurons, and it's basically the security guard for your entire brain. It's not interested in being happy or chill. Its only job 24/7 is to scan everything and ask one question: is that a threat? And its answer is always, probably, better freak out just in case. And just look at the difference in how it reacts. It's not even a fair fight. A positive event, like someone giving you a compliment, it generates a little blip of a signal, let's call it a 1. But a negative event, that rude comment, that mistake, triggers an electrical storm, a signal that's 100 times stronger. Your brain treats bad news like a life or death survival lesson it has to learn right now. Good news? It's just nice to have information. And this crazy 100-to-1 ratio leads to all these little mental traps. First, there's selective attention. We just automatically scan for what's wrong, what's missing, what could go sideways. Then there's memory reconstruction bias, which means when we look back, our brains literally highlight the negative parts of a memory. And finally, there's loss aversion. This is a big one. The research is clear. The pain of losing something feels twice as bad as the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. No wonder we're so cautious. Okay, so the amygdala sounds the alarm. But how does the brain make sure we never forget that alarm? Let's look at the memory process itself, because it's basically designed to turn bad experiences into superglue. Yeah, your brain has an actual system for this. Think of it like a librarian. When a good memory comes in, it gets shelved normally. But when a bad memory comes in, the librarian slams a giant red, urgent survival data stamp on it and puts it right on the front desk so you can't possibly miss it later. And it all happens in this 4-step loop, in the blink of an eye. First, the threat cue. That negative thing happens, and the signal takes a shortcut, bypassing your logical brain and going straight to the amygdala. Second, the Amygdala Accelerator. The amygdala goes off, flooding your system with stress hormones like cortisol. This stuff is literally neurological superglue. Third, memory retrieval bias. Because that memory is coated in superglue, it's way easier to recall later. And finally, avoidance reinforcement. The next time you avoid that situation, you feel relief, which tells your brain, hey, that loop worked, and makes it even stronger for next time.
So, the big question is, why? Why on earth did our brains evolve to be so darn negative? Well, the answer comes down to the brutal but very simple math of survival.
This pretty much says it all, doesn't it? For our ancestors wandering the savannah, being wrong about a threat was a fatal mistake. If you think that rustle in the grass is just the wind and it's actually a lion, game over. But if you think a berry bush is poisonous when it's actually delicious, you just miss out on a snack. So evolution powerfully selected for brains that made the first kind of error as little as possible. It basically selected for anxiety.
And you can see this play out in our brain chemistry. Look at this. When you feel a negative emotion, it signals danger. You get a shot of cortisol and adrenaline, and the memory is encoded instantly and deeply. It's incredibly strong. But a positive emotion, that signals safety. You get some nice serotonin and dopamine, but the encoding process is slow, it's fleeting, and the memory is just weaker. Our brains are chemically designed to let the good times fade and to burn the bad times into our memory.
Okay. Okay, I know. That all sounds a little depressing. It sounds like we're stuck. But here is where the story completely changes. Because we are not just our programming. We can actively, consciously push back. So now we move from understanding the problem to actually doing something about it. Now, let's be super clear. You can't just delete the negativity bias. It's baked in. Trying to do that would be like trying to stop your heart from beating. But you can build new mental muscles. You can use your conscious mind to intentionally override the system by turning up the volume on positive experiences. And let's start with a number. Research, especially from the world of relationship psychology, has found a really interesting ratio. It takes about 3 positive experiences to balance out the emotional weight of just 1 negative experience. 3 to 1. That's the ratio we need to aim for just to get back to neutral. So, our first technique puts this into action. It's so simple. At the end of every day, write down 3 good things that happened. The key is to be specific. Not just, I had a good day, but the coffee I had this morning was amazing, or my boss said nice work on that email. What this does is it forces your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, to go on a scavenger hunt for positive data, an activity your amygdala would never do on its own. You're training yourself to see the good. All right, technique number 2 is a personal favorite. It's called savoring. Think of it this way. If stress hormones are the super glue for bad memories, savoring is how we manually apply that glue to the good ones. It is the simple act of holding on to a positive moment for just 20 or 30 seconds to force your brain to actually hit record. And here's how you do it. Next time something even remotely good happens, just pause. First, absorb the sensory details. What do you see? What can you smell? Really be there. Second, name the feeling. Is it gratitude, relief, joy? Just putting a label on it helps. And third, try to connect that feeling to yourself. Turn "that was a good outcome" into "I am capable." Turn "that was a nice compliment" into "I am valued." This helps the memory stick. Our last tool is a game changer for dealing with criticism or failure. It's called the thought-action link. The old way of thinking is, I made a mistake, therefore I am a failure. We make it about our entire identity. The new way is to shrink the problem. Okay, this criticism, it's valid, but it's about 10% of this one project. And then immediately you pivot to action. So what's my plan? I'm gonna update step 2. This yanks the steering wheel away from your emotional, panicked brain and gives it back to your logical, problem-solving brain. We've dug into the glitch, the hardware, and the software patches. Now for our last section, let's zoom all the way out and land on what might be the most freeing insight of all. This is it. This is the big reframe. We get so frustrated with our brains for producing worry and anxiety because we think their job is to produce happiness. But it isn't. Their job is survival. And when you look at it from that perspective, the fact that you're here, alive, thinking these thoughts, it means your brain is an absolutely incredible, undefeated success story. So that feeling of anxiety, that tendency towards pessimism, it isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that your ancient internal alarm system is working perfectly. It's the echo of a brilliant survival program that got our ancestors through every single threat imaginable. It's not a bug. It's a feature that's just a little out of date.
And maybe this is the best way to think about it. Your anxiety isn't your enemy. It's like a loyal but deeply paranoid bodyguard who's been with your family for generations. It means well, but it's still operating on old intelligence. It just needs a new mission brief, a modern instruction set that you have to provide. And that's really what it all comes down to, working against our own programming. We have to actively and consciously teach our brains that things like calm, safety, and contentment are experiences worth recording with the same intensity as fear. We have to teach it that the absence of a threat is itself a reward worth remembering. So the only question left is, what's the first lesson you're going to teach it today?